truths and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on Earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause. Welcome to The Probable Cause. This is a podcast covering the criminal justice system in Allen County, Indiana, northeastern Indiana, and the state of Indiana when applicable. I'm your host, JB Duffy, a locally based journalist. And to my left is our co-host, McAlexander. He is the Allen County Prosecutor. Also appearing on the cell phone will be my right hand. She came to her knowledge of the criminal justice system through the heartbreak of losing her son to homicide now almost 9 years ago. Today we're going to talk about the First Amendment, which includes freedom of speech, freedom of the press, yes. There must have been many things that our founders had in mind when they created the First Amendment, which is part of the Bill of Rights, I found out. And I just wanted to say that this was Mike's suggestion that we talk about this, so I'm sure he has some things to say about the First Amendment as well. But first, as you know, we need to go to the courts. Mike, what have we got this week? I think we've got a lot.
Especially for a lot of times, while we didn't really have a lot of elections, the courts have usually avoided Election Day, and we did have the referendum in Northwest Allen County schools that was voted down yesterday.
Yes, it was. So
we do have a homicide trial going that started yesterday. And
they got a jury quite quickly.
Yeah. And last week we had a trial where we got a hung jury on the murder count and not guilty on a couple of other counts.
So the one where they got the hung jury, is the prosecutor's office kind of deciding if they're going to retry that case?
I believe it was on for a trial resetting.
It was.
Today.
But when I talked to Tom Shaley, who is the chief deputy prosecutor and who was on the case, he did say that there was a trial setting for the gun enhancement. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute, if he wasn't found guilty of felony murder and it's hung jury on murder, how can he have the gun enhancement?
Because the murder count was a hung jury.
Oh, he can. They can go ahead with the gun enhancement even though it's a hung jury.
Well, it's like a habitual finding. They do it as a part 2.
Oh, okay. So that was my understanding. I guess we'll find out and report back next week. This week, yes, it is Brashawn Smith. I was there yesterday for opening arguments and then some of the witnesses. He's accused of shooting Maria Luz Margarita Munoz, who was 26 years old, at the Showgirl 1 strip club. There were 3 people who were shot. She died. And it was around just past 3 o'clock when the bar had closed, or the strip club, I should say, had closed. They were all standing outside, kind of enjoying the night, and the next thing you know, she's lying dead. She had nothing to do. She did not know the shooter. He is accused of being the shooter. Robert Scrimmin is the lead attorney, and on the state side, and then on the state side, you have Tom Shaley. Once again, the hardest working homicide prosecutor these days. Anyway, I just feel like every time I walk into the courtroom, it's Tom Shaley and Rachel Gershwind, who I believe was on it last week, too. Mm-hmm. So she's getting a lot of practice with Tom Shaley.
Well, Tom and Tess have been a great team, and we're trying to develop others to be as good.
Yeah. I mean, Rachel is, she's, I mean, I'll see her tomorrow when they reopen today. That they had to shut down the trial for a day, so because Judge Frangol is on her way to the honor flight, if not already left. I think they leave.
Yeah, they leave pretty early in the morning.
Very early in the morning. And I should mention, I'm going to break in here a minute. My wonderful cameraman and I were at the Veterans Court yesterday, and we did a reel that you really should see. We highlighted Judge Ashley Hand of the Circuit Court and Judge Francis Gull of the Superior Court. They both run the Veterans Court, which gives the veterans an opportunity to get treatment for mental health disorders and for substance abuse disorders. And there were 14 people who graduated, and I urge you to go to YouTube. You can see closing remarks by Frangol. You can see our reel on our Facebook page, The Probable Cause. And it can be very moving. I loved it. There was my favorite preacher, Isaac Fincher, was there. 90 years old. He is the cutest guy. I remember him from the protests 5 years ago. And he was, and then there was somebody who was 23 years old. So they're all suffering still from the effects of war. Last week, Tyree Barfield was the attorney for the murder trial of Shan Ford. This is the one that Mike was talking about. He was found not guilty of felony murder and attempted burglary, and it was the hung jury for the murder charge for the shooting death of Tornor Doby. 2 women were also involved. Anisha Jackson was also killed, but they're saying it was the bullets from the return fire from Mr. Doby that killed her, and Quenisha Gaylor, who owned the beauty parlor where it all started. They were all there when that horrible commotion took place. We had some other plea deals. Priya Witt, who was involved and admitted to being involved in the murders of Jamie Klein and Anton Moore in 2017, but she did not partake in the homicides. So she got 7 years. Fargo Bennett, 30 years for the shooting death of Jason Underwood, who shot 11 times. He was shot 11 times and dumped at the boat ramp in PFW in 2017. Such a disrespectful way to treat somebody. Cedric Williams was sentenced to 110 years for the death of Vanessa Brabson in 2023 in Bloomingdale Park. He faces yet another murder trial for the body dumped at the railroad tracks in January of 2020. I have covered all these trials at one time or another, and I really, really urge you to go on www.theprobablecause.com. You can search for them in the bar, and you'll see some of my writing, because that's why I started this podcast in the first place. And then Mike agreed to join me, so we are really a team. Oh, there's one more thing. I was at a doctor's office 2 weeks ago, and this woman brought up her cousin Riley Henrietto, who was shot to death on April 15th, 2022 in the 7800 block of Eagle Trace Cove.
I know that family.
You know them?
Yeah, his sister-in-law I grew up with. She was like my best friend.
He was only 23
school.
years old. She said he had gotten into some things in high school. But nobody deserves to be shot dead. He was sitting in his own car. There was another passenger who was also shot but did not die. Riley, did I say he was a graduate of Carroll High School? So he has a lot of friends out there. Maybe they know something. His cousin said that there was something about $700 that was said when he was being shot, and the shooter had on a mask. So I can see why it's very difficult to solve a crime like this when it's a hit.
And his mom kind of stayed out of his business, like didn't like get involved in trying to find out what he's up to or what he's doing. So she doesn't, with my son, we were able to find who did it pretty quickly because, he talked to me. He told me what he was up to, and I tried to convince him not to do things, but there's the two kind of parenting styles. One that they're all up in your business, and one that you're stand back and like, if he wants me to know, he'll tell me. And she was that kind of mom where I was all up in his business. And
it's so hard to know as a parent what to do. I raised 2 boys, and I tried to get involved in many of the things they were involved in. And the younger one did talk to me a lot more than the older one. Yeah. I think I just lucked out. They did not like drugs. So, but I didn't know that. My right hand, I'm glad you told us about that. All right, we've got a lot to cover with the First Amendment podcast. I'm going to let Mike have quite a say here, but I just wanted to introduce the whole thing. The First Amendment protects 5 fundamental freedoms. Freedom of religion, so important. You are free to pursue the religion that you want, to worship where you want. Freedom of...
Well, and that's the key right there. It's not that you're free to getting anybody, know what someone's religion is or participate in their religion. You're free to have a religion. You're free to practice believing in a higher power, but you're not allowed. It doesn't give you the right to tell somebody else what they can do religiously.
Right. So, and the other one, freedom of speech, which we're going to get into. Freedom of the press, which is, of course, one of my favorite ones. The right to peaceably assemble, which must have been very, very important to our founding fathers. Because you weren't allowed in the corner or the taverns, and they were getting interfered with in that way. And the right to petition the government, which we don't hear that much about that one. The right to petition the government, but it's there. And so we'll have to have Mike tell us about that one. This was adopted in 1791 as part of the Bill of Rights. It prevents the government from infringing upon these liberties, although the specific extent of these protections is subject to ongoing interpretation and dispute by the courts. So first one, as you're talking about freedom of religion, this includes two clauses. The Establishment Clause, which prevents the government from establishing an official religion. My friends in Germany pay taxes to two churches, the Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church. And my friend Dietmar doesn't agree with that, but that's what they are. They keep those churches going, and, to us, that would be anathema, right? To use another religious term. And the Free Exercise Clause, which prevents the government from prohibiting the free exercise of religion. Does anybody have anything to say about that?
It's like many of these issues, those amendments were passed, 230 plus years ago.
Right.
They are still being interpreted and enforced. We've had recently, I think in Indiana, we had a group of people that said they had a church, so they would be covered by the First Amendment. But
and
part of their ritual,
taxes, right?
No, their ritual was that they wanted to smoke marijuana as part of their sacrament.
In Indiana, they want to smoke marijuana. Okay.
And the courts determined that they were not a legitimate religious establishment. So,
I wonder if they were following the same one that Bob Marley did.
But we still see litigation, as you said, about whether they should be paying taxes.
Right.
And those kind of cases get interpreted all the time.
And I mean, are they really a religion? And, a lot of times they're saying, well, they call themselves a church, but, they'll find every reason. It is kind of maddening.
Well, and this also comes up frequently in our schools. There's certainly a lot of concern about how we're teaching our kids or not teaching them appropriate moral behavior. And in our society, so much of that is connected to the foundational religious beliefs, whether it's the Ten Commandments, and we still see litigation about posting things that are religious in its foundational elements, but in public buildings, and what is appropriate and what isn't, and is it really expressing or a type of religion, or is it expressing moral principles? And so we've had that push-pull certainly in this country for the last, I think in the 1950s, 1960s, a lot of litigation, but it's ongoing. I think there was a big debate a few years ago about the Ten Commandments in the state capitol in Alabama.
Somewhere like that. Well, there is such a thing as separation of church and state. So.
Right, but again, is this directing people to a religion, or is it trying to provoke appropriate behavior and moral thinking?
I guess it would depend on the population too. I mean, we're going to come to the point where maybe we need, I don't know if there's such a thing, the Quran also mentions Jesus. So it's like, oh, did they have 10 Commandments? Will they put them on there? I know where I lived in New Jersey, in Madison, we had a Christmas tree, and we also had Hanukkah, at that time of year. So it was Nobody had a problem with it. So, freedom of speech, let's go on to that one. This protects the right to express oneself without government interference, including the use of offensive words to convey political messages and the right to receive information. It also covers commercial speech and political campaign donations. That's a tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking Citizens United here pops up in my brain.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think this pops up in a lot of areas that, again, there's ongoing litigation. As an attorney, I have a lot of limitations on what I could say due to our rules of professional responsibility. As a prosecutor, I have special rules that limit what I can say. And if
Or it could be used against you.
Well, it could also result in me being disciplined by the Supreme Court Disciplinary Commission. Todd Rokita, our Attorney General, just went through a pretty intensive investigation regarding remarks he made a couple of years ago about a doctor in Indy who had, I think, provided the pill for an abortion for a 10-year-old girl from Ohio.
Right, I remember that one.
So again, these are issues that are very much alive, and we deal with a lot, and it does impact what we do. You know, I'm prohibited from, and why I so infrequently talk about the facts of a case,
right?
Because I've got a duty not to try to influence the potential jury pool by saying inflammatory things. It's basically, I think I described it to somebody the other day, in trying to follow those rules, stick to who, what, when, and you don't go to why. It's like what we provide in our probable cause affidavit.
Beyond that, as far as if you say anything prior to the conviction, you talk about the appeal. They could use it against you there.
We can talk about the administration of justice.
Right.
You know, a trial date is set for this date or whatever. You know, who the players are, what the charges are. But I'm not supposed to go out there, and would be subject to discipline if I started saying, this is the worst crime I ever saw. That guy should be taken out and strung up.
But don't some prosecutors do that? They get up in front of the mics and start talking about, we're going to prosecute this guy, he's the one who did it, et cetera, et cetera?
Sometimes people get carried away, and they are subjecting themselves to potential discipline.
Yeah.
And a court can put a gag order on a case to stop, which would stop your freedom of the press as to what we can say in freedom of speech. I think that was done in the Duffy case, that there was a gag order on the attorneys and law enforcement not to talk about the case.
Was this the prosecution or the defense attorneys?
Usually if they do that, it covers both.
Covers everything.
Even covered the families and people that weren't necessarily in the trial. Anybody that was connected to it wasn't allowed to talk.
Right. Well, that case I can understand.
Well, I mean, again, the purpose is that in the criminal justice system, we're trying, as we've talked about picking juries and stuff, we're trying to get a fair and impartial jury that isn't tainted. I don't think we see this as much as we used to, but if a case got too much publicity, it could result in having a change of venue in the case, taking it to another county, or as they did in Delphi, they picked a jury in Allen County and took them to Delphi. We've had cases here that received a lot of publicity, that we've picked juries in other jurisdictions in Indiana and brought them here. And then we've had cases a decade or so ago, the couple of cases from Indianapolis were brought up here to be tried.
What about the one? Well, I won't.
But it's part of it. What people forget about a lot of our constitutional rights is they do have limits. And that also gets us into free speech, where that comes up. The classic is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater because of the damage you'll cause to other people. So you have to remember that these rights aren't absolute. There are limits on them. And they're generally, those limits are for a better purpose.
Right. Safety. So we have freedom of the press. This protects the right of the press to publish information and express views without government censorship. And I will say that I have seen these news organizations become more careful, because right now there's a lot of suing going on, and big settlements. So, but we have to protect that. And you can watch other countries and see what happens there. We're going to get to what countries do have freedom of speech and what don't. But for right now, we do have the right of the press, and this is big in the UK too, to publish information, express views without government censorship. But sometimes they go too far. So you have to know the rules. I mean, to get a journalism degree, that's probably your best bet, your insurance.
Well, and a lot of the press, I think because of the fairness doctrine, we don't see on, say, our local news much opinion provided. But
unless it's called that.
Right. But even then, how much, it's been a long time since I've seen the station manager. I remember they used to do this. The station manager or an anchor would come on and say, this is an editorial from our channel, and then they'd read
I never see that.
I haven't seen it in years, but I do remember when they did do that. And clearly our newspapers have a long history of running an editorial page. And they, at least our local papers, have always had, when the New Sentinel was publishing, they do letters to the editor of both sides. But when we had the two papers, the Journal-Gazette was generally considered more liberal, and the New Sentinel was considered more conservative.
Right.
And their editorial positions kind of followed that. Now that we only have one paper, you see people critical of the Journal because they really haven't changed that position over the years.
Oh, I used to hear it when I was there. Mm-hmm. I think the greatest thing they have, and I used to tell Wayne, why don't we have an editorial page, is that you allow people to write letters to the editor and sound off. And the Journal is very good about putting both sides when it comes to letters to the editor. Not that I read them every single day, but they will do something that probably is contrary to how a lot of people feel. It would have been more in line with the New Sentinel, but
one thing that I think it's important to recognize about the First Amendment, and the reason why a newspaper can do that or a TV station can or cannot do that, they are private entities. They aren't the government. And the First Amendment is a limitation on what the government can do. So as a private individual, if I owned a newspaper, I could decide what I put in it.
Right.
And what I say. Now, I think there's some regulations with television that go back to the monopoly when it first started. There was such a limited number. And I think right now we have that issue with funding of public broadcasting that has come up. And I know some people have said, well, when that was established back, I think in 1969 or so, you only had the three major broadcast networks. Well, now we've got
everything.
Well, we've got four general broadcast networks and then PBS. Mm-hmm. So there's five. And then how many channels on cable that are available?
You can get your news everywhere.
And so is the point I would make there, and I like PBS and all of that.
You don't want to be giving up Masterpiece Theater. Come on.
Right. I love Downton Abbey. And
absolutely.
But that point is that a function that government should be doing?
It's always been the question with them. I just, I forget what percentage of their money came from government funding, so maybe they need to keep it but find a new model. You're right. Because I don't see people, I mean, come on. What is it, Keeping Up Appearances with Hyacinth Bouquet? Is that not one of the most hilarious shows you've ever seen? Richard! I love it. Freedom of assembly. This guarantees the right of people to gather peacefully to protest issues, advocate for rights, and support a cause. We're seeing a lot of protests across America right now. So the freedom of assembly is a big issue right now, I would say.
It's if you look at the history of our country and with major societal changes, the civil rights movement, I mean, when I was growing up in the 60s, the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement relied on that freedom of assembly. 3 weeks ago or so, we had the No Kings rally on the courthouse lawn.
Yeah, it's huge.
So, and then the other part of it is go back 5+ years to the protests after
George Floyd.
And we had people taking over the streets. Well, we charged a lot of people on that for blocking traffic because they went from peaceful singing songs, chanting, holding up signs, whatever, to disrupting traffic.
I've heard both sides of that.
I know. But
As somebody whose foot stepped off the curb and she got yanked and arrested and taken over to the jail. So, and yeah, there were people lobbing, water bottles. I was there that night. I was there a lot. And we have a great podcast on that with some great B-roll, as I recall.
well, and we had several people convicted of crimes. We had vandalism done to some downtown buildings.
Yeah, but where is that? The two main guys, I won't say their names right now.
But again, all of this is still very much alive. It is, when we talk about a document that's 234 years old, and yet we are still interpreting and using that to set public policy.
And I love that, actually. Don't you?
Well, and that's when they talk about that we have a living constitution that is still relevant today.
Yeah.
Now, you can go through the Constitution and find things that you go, what is that?
Reads like the King James version of the Bible, sort of? Okay.
Well, yeah, there's stuff about piracy in there and letters of Marquis.
The Marquis de Lafayette?
Well, I think it was to hire privateers.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there's some things that, are kind of out of date, but so much of the Constitution still is a very living document right now.
Ken Burns does have a new one coming out called It's About the Founding of America. I'm so excited. That will probably be shown on PBS.
Probably so.
So and I love his documentaries. So anyway, we also have the right to petition. This gives citizens the right to appeal to the government for a redress of grievances or to ask the government to correct wrongs. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I think we're seeing a ton of that right now in response to the Trump administration's pulling funding for some things and trying to redirect funding.
Yes.
And you're seeing all sorts of litigation going on right now about programs from student loans to university funding to, I think on the SNAP things during the shutdown, people went to court. So.
Well, we still have the shutdown.
Right.
I don't think that's been.
But what I'm saying is that we utilize that court system to petition the government, essentially, to do certain things or not do certain things. And we are, again, that's as active today probably as it's ever been.
I know, but I really like that. I think that, I have at least 4 ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War, as we call it, and I think that they were standing up for that. So here's the First Amendment states in relevant part that Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech. Freedom of speech includes the right not to speak specifically, the right not to salute the flag. That's from West Virginia Board of Education versus Barnett. Of students to wear black armbands to school to protest a war. Students do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate. To use certain offensive words and phrases to convey political messages. That's Cohen versus California from 71. To contribute money under certain circumstances to political campaigns. That's from Buckley versus Vallejo in 1976. Yeah. To advertise commercial products and professional services with some restrictions. That's the Virginia Board of Pharmacy versus Virginia Consumer Council, which I found interesting because I do kind of remember that doctors and lawyers never, ever advertised on television.
We had ethical rules of professional responsibility when I came out of law school that very much restricted commercial advertising by lawyers, and lawyers went to court to challenge that when they got disciplined. And hence now we can watch our daytime TV and see all sorts of personal injury lawyers and national lawyers that either the water at Camp Lejeune or different issues that people have.
Yeah, I mean, there's no real reason why they're not allowed to. I mean, it seems awkward. The last one in that, what I thought was interesting because this one gets a lot of attention when it occurs, to engage in symbolic speech, e.g., burning the flag in protest. It offends people. How dare you? I mean, that is our one symbol of the United States.
And that's probably something that I've certainly seen evolve from the 1960s, when if you put a flag or something that looked like a flag as a patch on your jeans, you were potentially subject to arrest for how you were treating the United States flag,
Really?
much less, and certainly it was prohibited in schools and stuff like that. It's actually interesting to see
Now
how that
people
has
wear
evolved.
underwear with the flag on it.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
I mean, the flag has been used in so many ways these days, and it's very much accepted. People have suits made in the flag and hats and all sorts of things that.
You just have to watch any convention, national convention.
And it's done by both parties, and it's just one of those things that the attitude 60 years ago and the attitude now is so much different.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, they look like clowns, but all right, freedom of speech does not include to incite imminent lawless action. That's Brandenburg versus Ohio from 1969.
Yep.
To make or distribute obscene materials. That's Roth versus the United States, which we are going to talk about a case there I told you about. Mm-hmm. So, because it's all to decide what is obscene and what isn't. To burn draft cards as an anti-war protest. You're not allowed to do that.
Right. I remember people went to jail for that.
Yeah. I mean, right now you can print them back on your laptop, but to permit students to print articles in a school newspaper over the objections of the school administration. That's Hazelwood School District versus Kohlmeyer from 1988.
Well, we have that going at IU right now.
And Ball State. Of students to make an obscene speech at a school-sponsored event. That's from 1986.
Well, and there's all sorts of litigation on obscenity. What was George Carlin's the 7 famous words or something?
Yeah. But also, I mean, we're hearing politicians use the F word now on TV. This is what, we are in an era where, I mean, we don't even have to belabor what social media has given us. But when I see it on TV, it's still like, oh my God, did he really say it,
I mean, I've certainly seen politicians and people on political talk shows use words just in the last couple of years that they would have gone to a blooper, or it would have been beeped out on a delay or something. And I'm not saying they're not common usage, but something seemingly has changed. I don't know if the FCC is no longer fining people for using certain language or what it is, but there certainly seems to be a lot more of it.
And I mean, it's up
recently.
to us parents to teach our children to be gentlemen and ladies. There's certainly a civil code out there. And it does seem like we're lacking in that. Here's the last one in this. Of students to advocate illegal drug use at a school-sponsored event. I mean, really? I don't know about that one. I can't imagine. I mean, you're talking about what school? Are you talking about high schools, universities? People kind of look the other way. Drugs are everywhere, as we know. And they're not going away, unfortunately. Many countries have legal protections for freedom of speech with high rankings. It's always Scandinavia for high rankings in how they run their prisons, their educational systems, their happiness levels. But this is freedom of speech. Norway, Denmark, Sweden, also Canada, Finland, New Zealand. Finland's always way up there. New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. The specific level of freedom can be subjective and is often debated. We also have not just Scandinavia and Northern Europe, Australia, New Zealand, did I already say them? And then Western Europe, yes, Germany and France and the Netherlands are recognized for having strong free speech protections. Then we go over across Pacific Ocean to Japan and Taiwan. Supposedly have, I don't know, I can't comment on them. Chile was the one that kind of surprised me in South America because I'm like, oh, really? Didn't they have a dictator there? I mean, maybe because they got rid of the dictator. Was that Pinochet? I can't remember. I'm feeling like it was Pinochet, but anyway, maybe they decided, hey, we've got to open up our society, and then maybe we'll attract business and international students, etc. And important considerations, I don't want to do that one. Some of the most censored nations globally, if you're thinking of going to North Korea.
Wasn't exactly on my travel list.
Yeah, I know. We'll have to talk about travel lists, but Burma, I'd agree with that one. We have a lot of Burmese here in this country who had to go to Thailand first. Turkmenistan, which I'm not sure where that is because I don't think they're talking about Turkey there. Equatorial Guinea, which I believe is in South America. Libya, Eritrea, Cuba, Uzbekistan, Syria, and Belarus. I kind of have hopes for Syria now that Assad is gone. You know, I do pray that they can get some kind of democracy going on there. And then I wanted to go to a couple of great examples that are closer to home. We do have a freedom of speech. This was on the front page of Indiana Lawyer. There's a story about this woman. This is a very recent copy, this lady right here, if you can get the camera going on her. Her name was Suzanne Swerk. It's S-W-I-E-R-C. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. She moved 1,000 miles to Ball State University to take a position there as a director of health promotion and advocacy. But she wrote about, now do you remember Charlie Kirk, who was killed in September? This is what she wrote in I believe on X. Charlie Kirk's death is a reflection of the violence, fear, and hatred he sowed. It does not excuse his death, and, all caps, it's a sad truth. So that was on her own social media. Let's put her social media page, whether it was, say, Twitter or, X or Facebook or whatever. The president of the university explained why she got fired. He said public employees relinquish their First Amendment rights as a condition of entering government service. Ball State apparently is a public university, partially funded by the legislature. But just like private employers, the government needs to exercise control over its employees to provide public services. In other words, public employees, by necessity, accept certain limitations on their freedom. Now, the ACLU representing her says, just because you take a job with a public entity doesn't mean you give up your right to free speech. I will say that I know when I was at the Journal-Gazette, they did take a good look at our Twitter accounts. It was Twitter then, so I can say it. And so I just sort of gave up giving my own opinion on Twitter and social media. But individual reporters do go on and give their opinions because, you know, I go on most social media to see what they're saying.
Well, didn't ABC just fire Terry Moran, who is a longtime national reporter, for he either posted something on X or Twitter, or but was very negative, I think, about President Trump, and they terminated him.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what that was about. Yes, I do remember that.
And as I said earlier, about as a lawyer, I've got all sorts of restrictions about what I can say regarding court proceedings.
And yet we have to remember what Walter Cronkite, who's held up as the icon of news, did stand up there, and, you know, he's renowned for what he said about the Vietnam War. So, and he didn't get fired. It was a different era. Yeah.
Definitely a different era.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was also referred to as the most trusted man in America.
That's right.
Because you couldn't really tell what his political views were based on his reporting and the way he handled the news. I mean, that's one of the things that does concern me about freedom of the press, that when it's exercised in news stories, I mean, I go back to being part of my high school newspaper
All
stuff.
right. Did you cover sports or politics, or what was your beat, Mike?
I was the editorial page editor.
Oh my gosh.
But, you know, I've learned, you know, I went to a seminar for student journalists at Ball State, I think, after my, well, it was during the moon landing in '69. So I was, after my sophomore year, spent a week there and almost got kicked out for writing something.
No kidding.
But
We'll be careful about that because people evolve, right?
well, and the world has evolved, and I think journalism has evolved, and some of it is good. I think investigative journalism is important to look for the secrets of government. Because there are times when, yeah, you don't mind, oh, you didn't cover that, that's just fine. But for the good of the community, and when I say that nationally, we do rely on the press to expose wrongdoing.
Yes, we do. I mean, I personally feel like ProPublica is amazing.
But And
you know,
maybe this is just me, but I'm used to picking up the newspaper and reading it, and I expect to get the basics: who, what, when, where, how, but not necessarily a lot of why in a news story. Now, if I want to flip to the editorial page and read an article, whether it's a letter to the editor or an editorial by the editorial board, I'm fine with that. Express your opinion.
But see, in a news article, if you read the why, it shouldn't be presented by the journalist, him or herself. It should be an expert in the field who's giving you the why. You know, one of the most difficult pieces to write about is the environment, because you rely on scientists, you rely on people, let's say in the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. They're always loath to say something exactly. Yes, this causes cancer. Don't use this product. So when you try and get to the why, it's not up to me to say it. I spent 3 hours on the phone one day, years ago, with Monsanto over neonics, you know, that are killing the bees, right? They banned it in Europe, etc. Oh my God, 3 hours, my ear was like, but I was trying to find out, you know, and I had to listen to them. But
well,
anyway,
and I think that's where you're looking for studies or experts in the field that have looked into an issue.
Yes.
Well, this just came up nationally with the Tylenol thing and autism. And, you know, are the facts there to support it one way or another? But the story should be written as to what has happened, and then say, this study has done that, this study has done that.
Yeah, you hope it's research-based and that they get true experts on it. And I mean, if you take too much Tylenol, you can ruin your liver.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, to link it to that was.
But it's just that sometimes
you feel like
journalism.
there's going to be some people who take one Tylenol and they're going to feel like, you know, that.
You know, has journalism moved into more of a opinion, which as long as it's labeled as opinion, then
Right.
people can know. And that's what some of the trouble with the internet is, that you'll see something and you have no idea who it is. You don't know what they're basing it on, but they say these things that seem, you know,
And
you
totally
see these long threads.
speculation. This is what I've been listening to some podcasts lately, and being a trained journalist, I'm like, you know, and people are listening to it and they're believing it. That's, you know,
Well-
that's where our education system should come in. You know, we should make sure that we have a strong education system. So, I mean, I hope they're teaching people how to, like, at least question what they're listening to and what they're hearing and what they're reading. I don't know if that's happening or not.
Well, and I think this is where when people say that kind of stuff, and I don't know if it's because I'm a lawyer or because as a prosecutor, I am so used to when an event happens, so frequently the initial information we get is not accurate. And you keep digging, you keep investigating. But I'm also of a mindset when I look at stuff like this, it's like looking at a criminal case. Mm-hmm. Who are my witnesses to prove this?
Right.
And
That's a good approach.
That's what we do. And so when I hear stuff that's conspiracy oriented or all of that, okay, who do I call to prove that? And I think that's how you should be approaching a lot of this, to at least know what your source is and their bias, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, their sources.
And it's so hard to do that these days because you know, somebody will cite, well, this organization said that. You've, you know, shown us studies when we're discussing things.
Right.
And, you know, okay, well, who is that?
Right.
Or it's a foundation. Well, which way are they leaning? Is there a purpose behind them? You can't just take everything you read on the internet or elsewhere without knowing some of the background.
Well, it's like when I cite, I might go to IDOC and get some statistics. That's the Indiana Department of Correction. You're hoping that the figures you're looking at are correct. If I go to U.S. Prison Policy Initiative, then you know where they're coming from. If I go to Solitary Watch, which is fighting solitary confinement, you're going to know what their point of view is. But their facts might be very true because they're using they might be doing their own research. But these guys who just sit and throw something out, I get turned off. But then, of course, just like you, I'm approaching this just like you approach a case. I approach a story. And you know, I'm afraid that it's all gone haywire for the moment. Hopefully we'll get back to it.
And that's what I hope, is that there clearly has been bias. One thing, whether you agree with Trump or not, he's certainly shown or exposed that the media is frequently on the left side of things.
The mainstream media. But I'm a proud member of it. Just want to say that. Well, here's another story. I picked up this book. Okay, I was coming back from New York where I visited my son and his family, and I take the train, so I got off at the Albany station, and I found this book, and I thought, you know, it was kind of expensive. Should I take a chance? But it's A Lawyer in the Hood. And you know what? It's very entertaining, I swear. It's written by this guy, Michael A. Fite. And the second story that I read was about freedom of speech. So I thought that we would go over it. I mean, I could probably get a hold of him. But he practiced out of Syracuse. He was a University of Chicago law graduate, but he ended up in Syracuse, New York, because his wife took a job there. And he went to work at the district attorney's office of Onondaga County Courthouse. It is beautiful there in Albany and upstate New York, I must say. So anyway, he took this job. He was sort of almost like an intern with Assistant DA Richard Sardino, and the two prosecuted. Now, this is, I mean, it's just such a great story. The two owners of the Economy bookstore, and then there was also this clerk. She was a tiny white-haired clerk for selling a copy of Henry Miller's The Tropic of Cancer, which we were talking about before. It was written in 1934 in Paris by Henry Miller. It wasn't allowed to be sold here until 1961. It is filthy, smut, whatever you want to call it. But there was a freedom of speech issue. So one of the apparently many obscenity prosecutions in the 60s of the U.S. was this Puritan morality band Lady Chatterley's Lovery, which we would all laugh at now, Fanny Hill, which we would all laugh at now, Ulysses. You know, oh no, wait a minute, that was by James Joyce. What am I talking about? We're not talking about the real Ulysses. So anyway, there was an embargo that was lifted and it came over here to the United States. It did not pass the Roth test, which was what we were talking about before. Is it obscene or not? So, and that was a legal concept that was purporting to define obscenity pronounced by the Supreme Court in 1957. So with The Tropic of Cancer, this bus driver caught some teenagers reading the book and laughing about it. So there was a consortium of parents, clergy, school officials, and politicians that were clamoring for something to be done. So they sent an undercover detective into the Economy bookstore, which was the largest bookstore between New York City and Buffalo. Marguerite Fritsch, who was 62 years old, sold The Tropic of Cancer to this detective in March 1962. It cost 95 cents, right? The detective got a receipt, and this made it a crime. So poor little Mrs. Fritsch and the owners, Alan J. Hammerly and John E. Armstrong, president and treasurer of the corporation, were charged with obscenity, which was a Class A misdemeanor, and the sentence could last up to a year. So these prosecutors had to prove that the book was without redeeming social value and appealed to the prurient interest of the average man, and that would make it obscene. So as an intern, this man, Michael Fite, here he is, right here, said he felt a bit conflicted because he had to ignore his own sense of morality and free speech. But it was a job that he took on. The book itself was described as one of the greatest novels of the 20th century by some critics, and reprehensible, salacious, and debauched trash by the rest, right? So they had to establish scienter, which would prove that all three defendants knew that Tropic of Cancer was an obscene book. Have you ever had a case where you had to use scienter?
Well, yeah, you have to show knowledge of the
So it can be used in any kind of trial.
We actually, in the late 70s, early 80s, prosecuted several bookstores, X-rated movie theaters here. A case that ultimately was a RICO case. We had found that the owners of of several of these places were seemingly involved in some level of organized crime. We traced bank accounts and owners of companies to some of the Caribbean islands and
Wow.
stuff.
This is all from Fort Wayne.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, there was a case, our case, and a case in Indianapolis that went up to the Supreme Court. Steve Sims, the prosecutor at the time, argued in front of the Supreme Court.
The U.S. Supreme Court?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it didn't exactly get the outcome that we were looking for, but it kind of effectively, probably the combination of later internet has kind of destroyed a lot of those public uses of pornography and stuff, that we don't have the freestanding movie theaters or bookstores that we had in the 80s.
I mean, now it's even worse because it's all on the internet.
Yeah, and
I mean, you could argue that.
I mean,
anyway.
Karen Richards, one of her first duties when she first started with the office was doing these misdemeanor cases against the clerks and whoever was running the bookstores to use those as predicate crimes then when we brought the RICO action in 1984 or 85.
So, but was it a little bit like sad that they were the ones? Because
Well, there were times that you were getting the clerk. It's like when excise goes in, and at various times we've tried to do undercover work with either getting some kids that were underage or a police officer who looks real young and go in and try to buy beer or something. They'd be citing the clerk initially. If you had enough information that it appeared to be a pattern of the business, then you could bring an action against them.
So could he turn then and maybe get a plea deal for?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because I hate to see them they need a job and they're kind of like a stooge.
And sometimes you don't know if there's a test case kind of thing. Go to the 100 years ago, I think it's the anniversary of the Scopes monkey trial.
Right.
Where they charged a teacher with teaching evolution, which was against the law in Tennessee in 1925. One of the most famous trials with Clarence Darrow.
And that was what got you on the law, isn't
Yeah,
it?
and William Jennings Bryan for the defense.
Oh, my.
So-
I think my grandpa said he heard him speak once. So anyway, back to this one. This guy, Michael Fight in Sardino, the DA, called one of the dads who complained to the police chief about his children getting their hands on reading this immoral book, and there were 3 more parents who followed. So this is what really got me. So in order to prove that the book was obscene, the Sardino takes the 287-page book and reads it in court, every last word. So people were packing the courthouse, to hear this. And another thing I loved about the story was the detective on the stand testified he was just doing his job, going in and buying this dirty book, And then there was the county legislator and Chief Kelly, and we've heard this too, who claimed that the obscene books led to the commission of violent crimes, and he would go after anyone who was peddling smut. So the defense couldn't put on the little white-haired lady who was 62 years old, Marguerite Fritsch, because right in the middle of the trial, somebody walks into the courtroom and says that her sister just died in Buffalo. So, I mean, what a trial. I mean, this guy is a good writer. One of the owners got on the stand and said he hadn't read the book, that it was one of a number of books they got from Grove Press, which I think is still around. And when asked why he didn't read it, he said he had 100,000 titles in the store, and how could he possibly read them all? Then, to counter this, the defense put on the chairperson of the English department at Syracuse University, which is a very fine university, by the way, who called the book an artistic masterpiece, capturing the lifestyle of a subculture whose values were inapposite to the mainstream. So, you had both sides here. It's a gorgeous book, which I did not find it a gorgeous book. Like I said, I don't think I finished it. Sardino asked, do you want this book in your home, in your children's schools, in our libraries? And also the fact that Sardino had a second cousin on the jury. This deserves to be a movie, in my opinion. Nevertheless, everybody was found guilty. The defendants appealed, and the county court right there in Onondaga County overturned the convictions, but the state Court of Appeals agreed that the book was obscene, sent it back to the Court of Special Sessions for a new trial on scienter to prove that they knew that it was. I mean, do you think that clerk read Tropic of Cancer? I'm just saying. Do you think she did? I doubt it. Some of the judge comments, I'm not sure it was this case or not, we really should think of when we're talking about obscenity was, this is the Supreme Court, but I don't know if it's New York Supreme Court or the U.S. No one has ever been raped by a book. I think I've heard that one before.
I don't. Now, there is a famous quote about obscenity that I think it was Potter Stewart,
Go ahead, because I've got it here, I think.
the U.S. Supreme Court justice. I think the classic quote is something to the effect of, I don't know how to define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yes, that's it. I can't define obscenity, but I know it when I see it.
And they've struggled with that definition and with the contemporary community standards and some of the other buzzwords in regards to obscenity. Trying to remember all of the little thing. We've kind of settled on definitions, but it is difficult to define that. And some of the standards, I mean, back in those days, I think basic nudity was frequently considered obscenity. So when Playboy premiered in 1953 or something, it was like scandalous, and compared to some things that came later, it was treated kind of as mild-mannered.
Yeah.
And I believe there was a big law case against the publisher of Hustler magazine on obscenity cases as well. So this is another area.
Did he win it though?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he did.
I think this is another example that society's standards have changed dramatically in the last 100 years.
And I think there's a backlash to that. I think that's some of these church groups are really, they're having trouble with it. And I kind of get it. And like, where are the parents and everything else? And you cannot protect your children from everything. That's the thing, it's just.
Well, and I think that's the other issue on this is that everybody carries one of these around, and you can find anything on there if you look enough.
Well, I'm really glad that you all prosecute the child porn cases. I don't see how those will ever be considered freedom of speech. They are just gross, and I need to write up every single one of them because, and I found stats on those too, and I can't remember where, but they were good stats. So, I promise you. All right, so what else do we need to say about the First Amendment before? I don't have a rant, I have a little commentary.
Well, I just think that this is just an area that continues to evolve.
Yes.
It is very much alive and kicking. The examination of the Constitution, the First Amendment, we hear a lot about the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, Sixth, Eighth Amendment, are all things 14th, that they are still very much still being interpreted, still being examined. Their limits and boundaries are still being worked on.
Yeah.
And as society moves on and changes on some of these, the standards change.
I agree. And like I said, I'm glad that you prosecute some of these cases because they need to be. And then everybody gets their attorney, so I understand public defenders and whatnot. So it is around Veterans Day, and I am wearing a white poppy. I wanted you all to notice this. I purchased it for maybe a couple of quid, as they say in England. There were some little ladies that crochet these. They were all out of the red ones. They take Veterans Day super seriously over in England. I mean, a lot of the small store owners have actually beautiful. I took some pictures of those. They have some beautiful displays, and it's not just like, hey, I want to be patriotic, waving the flag. It's like, it really means it because England took a gut punch during World War I, and so did France. And so, and we sent our own boys over there. Like, I had a great grandpa who fought in World War I in northern France. So I just wanted to say that I just wanted you to know this, that, and notice why I'm wearing it and the color of it, because it's like, oh, it's not a red poppy, it's white. So what I was told at the post office in Marcham was that the white poppy is the peace poppy. And so, yes, I'm all for peace. I could say peace out, but I'm going to say last word, anybody? This has been The Probable Cause, which I want you to know you can go on our Facebook page, The Probable Cause. You can go on www.theprobablecause.com. We have reels, we have podcasts, we have many articles that I write, and if there was somebody else that wanted to cover a murder trial, I would let you have at it. I would be your editor, but I would let you have at it. You can also listen to our podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you have any suggestions as to what you would like to see us cover, please let us know on our website, which is also theprobablecause.com. And so, unless anybody else has anything to say, for now, goodbye. This episode is filmed and edited by Frosty Pictures. The Probable Cause is produced by Maumee Media.
Worried when I crossed the Michigan line, a cop from Steuben County waiting on I-69. A headlamp went out while he pulled me over. Charged me with possession after I rolled down the window. Now that's skunk. Indian's a trick when it comes to weed. It's like who doesn't smoke or use gummies? Your grandpa, your brother, your rich friend from school? Hell, throw in the whole courthouse and my attorney too. It's time those assholes change these stupid laws. It ain't worth the paper for a probable cause. Sitting on a bar stool in my usual place, this guy next to me said he was looking for some cocaine. Well, I just sold him an 8-ball with a little piece off for me. But my buyer was a cop? Should have known he was a creep. So I'm a dealer, right? You gotta be kidding. It's a rich man's drug. I just take it because I'm injured. 8 years in Westville with a monkey in my back. There's more drugs in here than you can shake a shank at. One dirty drug test, man, this system's flawed. Undercover screwed me in my probable cause. Street crimes never did me no favors. I'm hooked on Fetty. I'm a junkie, not a felon. Told that son of a bitch on the way to lockup. I can't seem to shake it. I need help, not mocking. What do you want from someone who's been through the system? Drugs all through the house before mom and dad went to prison. Throw me in jail and give me a fine? Someday I'll be dead and away from your kind. Now I'm at the courthouse in front of a judge. Can't say my public defender cares for me much. Crimes are committed on both sides of the law. God help me now with this probable cause. C-shift never gets old. Anything can happen when you're out on patrol. You think I'm just eating donuts, man? Give me a break. Nothing on this job is a piece of cake. Lights and sirens activated, this knucklehead wants to chase. Baby mama at the scene just spit in my face. Wife's worried that someday I won't be pulling up at all. You'll read about my killer in a probable cause. She went through my phone and she seen my text. I told her forget it. It was just my ex. She took a swing and knocked me flat. Man, I went wild and hit her back. Judge slapped me with a no contact order. Now she's got the kids and she's staying with her mother. So she started it all and I have to take the fall. You can read my whole story in the probable when I was young. Caught a case for dealing and did my time. Yeah, I got a record, but I was doing fine. Running my own business on the southeast side. Yeah, I got a gun. I kept it on hand. Told the cop my reason, thought he'd understand. In this neighborhood, you need some protection. Attorney thought I could get just community corrections, but the judge decided to send me to prison. Can't get ahead no matter how hard I try. Read the probable cause, it'll make you cry.
Whispers and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause.